Okay, everyone. So it's great to see so many folks here tonight, and I am assuming there'll be more people joining shortly. So I'm going to turn it over now to Terry Caputo. Terry is the chair of the District Governance Committee and has graciously offered to lead this webinar tonight on the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, which of course is of interest to everyone on the call. So Terry, over to you.
Thank you very much. So my objective here today is to provide you with what I hope is an easy to follow format to help your club maneuver through changes that most of you probably have to make in your articles and bylaws to be compliant with the I'm going to call it new, but it was proclaimed in 2018 and it was written in 2010. So it's new, but not so new. Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. And so I'm going to do a number of things here. I have the presentation. I'm going to switch to my computer. I'm going to switch to some documents that show you information that you will need. And it's great that this is being recorded, because if it wasn't, then you would be voluntarily chairing the committee to do this work. And so you can easily give this recording to someone else to help them through. As always, I am always here to provide any support and assistance should you need it. And this could be a simple process. It could be a difficult process. It all depends on how you decide to move through and the amount of diligence you want to do with this opportunity. And so it is an opportunity to sort of get your books and records and everything straight and start what I would consider fresh when it comes to the legal incorporation of your organization. Some of you here may be unincorporated, and we'll talk about that as well. And so I'm going to begin. I'll take questions as they come along, whether you just yell my name or whether you put your hand up. I have dual monitors, and so I can see everyone on screen as well as my presentation. So let's move on. So everyone can see this. I'm assuming everyone's fine with the presentation. Great. So we'll talk about what's new, the steps the club needs to take, the resources, and then there's a project plan. I've developed a template of a project plan that could help clubs maneuver through this process if you chose to use it. So, ONCA is the legislation that most not-for-profits incorporated under provincial law will need to follow, and it replaces the Ontario Corporations Act. And I believe the Ontario Corporations Act, the last time it was changed was in the early 1900s. And so this is someone might ask, well, why do we need to do this? It took a very long time to get this changed. And so when people say individuals don't like change, this is the best example of it taking so long. So what are some key terms? Some of you may be familiar with letters patent, and your organizations may have letters patent. These are now all referred to as articles, and they'll be your articles of incorporation. And so when you incorporated, you had to fill this out. The majority of you, I would expect, will have to amend your articles of incorporation because there are some items that now belong, or you have decisions to make on some items in terms of your articles of incorporation. So you'll have to amend them, get them approved, and then submit them in to the Service Ontario. And so it includes purpose, address, special rules. So who are members? So members of the Rotary Club would be the members of the club. Now, and so we're doing this for Rotary, but this is also a legal corporation. And so when individuals ask about RI, Rotary International says we need to do this. Actually, what Rotary International dictates, that's the operations of the club. From a legal perspective, it's the Ontario Corporations Act. And that will not, Rotary International rules will not supersede what's in the ONCA. And so there's how you run your club, and there's how you legally are incorporated and need to run the club from a legal corporate standpoint. So then why is this important? Actually, I think, for someone who enjoys the governance side, I think this is important because it'll give your clubs an opportunity to sort of look at all these documents and what, the documents that are supposed to be guiding your club, do a review of those and make sure they're all aligned and consistent. And I'm sure that probably 90% of clubs aren't aligned. Their bylaws, they probably don't know what's in their bylaws. And then their procedures have been changed. Different individuals in the club decided they wanted to do something different, and that became the norm. And there probably are procedures that are in contravention of your bylaws. You just don't know it because people don't look at the bylaws. And so to me, this sort of is a fresh point, and hopefully it'll avoid confusion later. Many of you know my role is to help clubs through governance issues. And usually, as the AGs were told at their training this last weekend, if you have to call Terry, there's probably you're in probably some hot water, and you really don't want to talk to him. And so I'm a nice guy, and I'm here to answer any questions you want. But normally when people call me, it's because something has gotten to a point where there's been a conflict in the club. There's been confusion because someone doesn't like a decision. And what do? They go to the bylaws. And if the bylaws if the bylaws haven't been followed, they use that to bring conflict into the club based on a decision that was made. And so you don't want that. And so it's really important that all your procedures and everything are aligned. And so in terms of what's new, I'm going to walk you through a great resource that we're using here at the district, and I would recommend everyone use. And so we'll walk through that in a second. And these are just some items that are new. So public benefit corporations, most of the clubs, probably all the clubs, this doesn't apply to you unless you receive over $10,000 in government funding. It wouldn't really apply to you. There are some financial review standards. Members have rights and remedies, changes for directors and officers, and then the Ontario Business Registry, which I really like. And normally, I'm not a fan of anything the government does or releases, and this business registry is actually a really good tool. And so, and then what steps should you take in terms of ONCA? And so these 5 steps, I've taken them from the website we're going to go to. Does it apply to you? When do you need to act? Getting your books in order, your bylaw update and your articles of amendment. And so, step 1, does ONCA apply to you? And so who does it apply to? Anyone who's incorporated in Ontario, it will apply to your club if you're incorporated, whether you're a charity or not. If you're not incorporated, we'll have a different discussion about that. It doesn't apply to you, but I have strong recommendations in terms of incorporating. And so some clubs may be incorporated under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. And you may have run into the same issue that my club ran into years and years and years ago, where we just stopped filing our information returns. And when you do not file for a number of years, you actually get deactivated as a not-for-profit corporation. And so we had to reactivate the club. And instead of going back through Ontario, where then they would be asking a lot of questions about why and looking back at records and whatnot, we just did a fresh start through the Canada Corporations Act, Not-for-Profit Corp Act. And so if any of you have been deactivated as a corporation, if you find out you have been, that's another option for you to do it through the Canada. It's similar, and the district, it happened to the district, and we did the same thing. We incorporated under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. And if you're unincorporated, you're considered an unincorporated association. That's the term that is used. And so when we're talking about incorporating a club, we're using Not-for-Profit Law Ontario, and the website is there. It's active link. So and we'll see if this works here. If you go and you click on it, shift and you click, it'll bring you to, are you seeing my browser? Okay, so it brings you to this website, it basically has all the answers from incorporating, so, starting a not-for-profit, how do you run a not-for-profit, your transition to ONCA, and resources. And so this is really all you need. This is a great resource. We were thinking at the governance committee to create our checklists and whatnot. And then we found this website which did it all for us. And so we'll walk through this site so that I'll be able to explain some items through this site. And so I'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so what is your status? We talked about, are you provincially incorporated? Are you federally incorporated? If you're a registered charity, you show up on the CRA database as well as the provincial database, or are you considered an unincorporated association? So why incorporate? And my guidance to any Rotary Club is going to be to incorporate. I would strongly recommend it. You don't have to, but what the club has to understand is that when you're unincorporated, you don't have that legal protection, right? So legally, the corporation is independent from its members. So members act on behalf of the corporation. You have directors, you have officers, they transact, you have insurance to cover you for certain liabilities and whatnot. When you're unincorporated, you are just a group of members acting together under a common purpose. And so what you do as a group, but you also do as an individual. And so liability could hit you as an individual as well, because there is no organization to sue. There are individuals to sue. Now you'll all have insurance, and I think, Larry, the unincorporated clubs have insurance as well, and so that's fine. But if your insurance isn't enough to cover the liability that's been brought against you, then the members' assets are exposed. And for me, that's the main reason club should incorporate, because you never want to have your own assets exposed. And it provides you with a structure that governs how you operate, because you have to put in your articles of incorporation. You have to have bylaws. Those bylaws put rules in place. An unincorporated association that has bylaws doesn't really mean anything. You may follow bylaws when you're unincorporated, but that's just, you've decided to do that legally. Anyone could do anything in the club. Now, can you sue? You can, but you need to go to court to get special permission to sue in an unincorporated situation. Whereas in an incorporated situation, there are it's an easier track. And so, when you incorporate, of course, you have to keep records because you have to file returns and whatnot, and you can enter into contracts, sue and not be sued. And so it's, I'm sure there are clubs that are unincorporated that have entered into contracts, not knowing that the person who signed the contract, they're personally liable in that situation. Not legally, not the club. They've signed their name, even though they're doing it on behalf. So I'm strongly recommending to clubs to incorporate. And it's a similar process to incorporate as it is to now amend your articles and change your bylaws. So it's not really that different. And so some clubs may have a foundation or a charity, or your club might be a charity. And so interestingly enough, foundations were very popular and in vogue, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And, I know in the hospital sector, they created foundations because they wanted to hide money from the government so that the government wouldn't reduce their funding. And then everyone started to create these foundations. I'm not sure. I totally agree with the purpose of foundations today in the hospital sector. I can see the fundraising in the smaller for smaller organizations. I wouldn't incorporate a foundation for my Rotary Club. I don't, but you can if you want, and many of you have them, so you'll have to make these changes. But at the end of the day, your foundation has to have charitable activities, and it could be one of these four. and the 4, the relief of poverty, the advancement of education, the advancement of religion, and other purposes that benefit the community. And Rotary fits into 3 of the 4. I think the only one we wouldn't fit into that you could make is the advancement of religion, because that's not within Rotary. But you have to get approval by the CRA. There are stricter rules. It's a higher level of fiduciary responsibility, and at the end, a lot of people, they look at being able to issue a tax receipt as a big seller for your events and whatnot. And I think that's becoming less and less the case. I worked for the Sinai Foundation. I ran it for 4 years. And, in that case, when you're raising millions and millions and millions of dollars and the level of donor, they are very interested in tax savings. And so they want to give to a foundation. But for the regular Rotary Club and the events that you do, I think a charity receipt is not material to most people. So that's my own personal opinion in terms of it. But as I said, many of you have charities or charitable foundations, and you'll have to go through the process twice: once for your club, once for your charitable foundation. And so when do you need to act? It took effect October 19th, 2021, and there are 3. You have 3 years, and so until October 18th, 2024 is the deadline. And so at that date, nothing earth-shattering happens, other than the fact that your bylaws and letters patent, they continue to be valid, but anything that is in contravention of the ONCA rules, ONCA applies. And so you can have items in your bylaw that someone could question, because if they go to the actual Corporations Act, they could point to a section that says, no, this needs to apply. You didn't do whatever process procedure, you didn't do that properly. And so there are key provisions here: number of directors, member classes, and voting rights, and dissolution clauses are some examples. And so step 3 is getting, your books in order, and it's basically gathering a whole bunch of information. So your letters patent, supplementary letters patent, your bylaw, your minute books. You should all have minute books, whether it's electronic or non-electronic. Any special resolutions that you make. And so those are the resolutions that require more than a majority vote. And so an example of that would be if you wanted to change, amend your articles, or if you wanted to, when you choose your auditors, you need to have two-thirds majority to enable that, to be able to pass that. The directors and officers register, and those have to be kept up to date. And I'm sure there are a lot of clubs that haven't updated them and probably have very old directors, maybe even people not even in the club. Consent forms. So interestingly enough, when you agree to be a director on the board, you actually have to agree in writing, and the corporation has to hold it. And so you may be a director, and if you haven't agreed in writing, then you're actually not a director until you do. And so that's a process step that's going to have to be added to many of your processes when you're selecting your boards. A members register, and we have those online, so that's probably very simple. Your financial statements, and then other governance documents. And so then you have to update your bylaws. And so some examples of changes, you have to appoint a chair. And so that normally the president is appointed as chair, or the president is the chair of the board of directors. So you have to allow the corporations to be eligible for membership. And that's, in Rotary, that's simple. And you could implement multiple member classes. I do not recommend that. A member is a member is a member. And so everyone has to have equal standing as members. And then members holding less than 10% of votes to be able to call a members meeting. And so that is just, if you have members that actually any member could call a members meeting. And so that's something that's different. I think it used to be over 10% before. And then allowing proxies. So we'll get into the proxy piece, because that is an interesting change as well. And then you have to update and file updated articles of incorporation. And so here's, here are a couple of items, and we'll go through these because I have an example of the form. Well, I have the form and what you have to fill out. But to file them, you need your company key, your one key, and your Service Ontario account. So, I'll also take you through that. But what I'd like to do first is I would like to walk you through this website. And so you have the link. If you are not incorporated and you want to start the not-for-profit, you would click on it, and it's very easy. There are different structures. How do we find our current status? And I'll show you that. How do we incorporate? Should we incorporate? And it's some of the same information I've already provided you. And then what an unincorporated association is. And so I'm not going to go through any of these in detail now, because I'm assuming the majority of you are incorporated, if not all of you. And then if you do need help walking through it, I'm happy to help you on an individual basis. If you go to running a not-for-profit, you start off with, I'll go to charities. And what it does is it actually gives you some really good questions. And so, do you have to change anything that might affect your charitable status? So for your foundations, some not-for-profits have to revise their articles. And so because ONCA requires different things, you're going to have to revise your articles and submit those in, even for a charity. Do we need to get approval? And so you do need to get approval from CRA and the Public Guardian and Trust, and that's the regulator for charities. So if someone has an issue with how you dispersed your resources as a charity, they could go and file a complaint with the Public Guardian and Trust, and the Public Guardian and Trust would come and investigate. And if you were seen that you didn't dispose of your resources appropriately, or you mishandled any of those resources, you'd be in contravention of the charity rules, and you could lose your charitable status. And could our articles put our charity status at risk? And so the answer is actually yes. So when you go to renew your articles, the CRA is going to look at what that purpose is. And a purpose that may have been appropriate 20, 30 years ago, they may have questions about that purpose today. And so there's nothing to say that they won't come back to you and say, explain to us more what you mean by XYZ. Like, it's not an automatic approval. I'm thinking with Rotary, it won't be a big deal, but you just never know. And so that's why it's important to look at your articles today and determine, okay, does this meet one of those four or three, in Rotary's case, the three charitable activities that we want to be a part of? And do we want to ensure that we have really good wording there to make sure that the CRA and Public Guardian doesn't ask us, or doesn't come back with questions concerning whether we actually have a valid charitable activity. So they have examples here on guidelines on how to draft your purposes for charitable registration, and so that's something that you could look at. So I will go back. Complaints. And so I had talked to this, how people complain. And so they complain to the Office of the Public Guardian Trustee. I'm not going to go through this section. It's all about what someone could do, and you don't want a complaint with the Public Guardian and Trust, because it's not a fun investigation. So in terms of directors, and so in ONCA, how many directors do you have to have? So at least three. Three is the minimum that you need. Now, with a Rotary Club, what you usually have is you have the directors within Rotary. So you have your director of club service, director of membership. You might have director of fundraising. By by their office, their title of office, they are automatically on the board. You would have to put that in your bylaws, that their office is going to make them a board director. And to me, that makes total sense. I would stick to that. I wouldn't do, because you could have a board and then you can have separately what you would probably just call your directors or your leadership team in the club running the club, but three people make the final determination and decisions. That's not how clubs operate mostly. Now, interestingly enough, that is how the district operates. We only have 3 directors on the board. And so it's the past governor, current governor, governor-elect. Those are the 3 that, so they make, legally they make decisions, but when we have our meetings, it's the whole leadership team and everything is done by consensus. And so when a vote comes and everyone agrees, those 3 automatically agree and we move from there. But I would recommend you keep your directors to whatever you have in the club. How long? So 4-year terms, 4-year terms, but there's no limit on how long you can serve. But the terms are for 4 years. And so that's kind of an interesting one because there is no maximum in terms of the number of terms, but that this needs to be in your bylaw. Do they all have the same length of term? That's not a best practice. A best practice is to stagger the terms of directors so that you have people coming on and people exiting. You don't have a whole exodus of the board in 1 year. So you may have, if you have 10 people or 10 members on the board, you may have, 2 to 3 coming off in any given year and 2 to 3 new ones coming on, and the rest are still there to maintain continuity. Do directors have to be members? So the answer is no, but I would put this in your bylaws it's yes. Like under the legislation, it doesn't have to be, but in Rotary, we don't want directors that aren't members of the club. It doesn't make sense. Now here's what I said. Can someone be a director because of their office? And the answer is yes. And I would include that in the bylaws, that their office automatically makes them directors of the board. Now it says here, so I'm not going to go, you can read through the other questions. When we talk about how many directors do you need, we say 3, and you may have 10. Now within the legislation, it allows you, instead of having a fixed number of directors, it allows you to use the language up to. And I would really have a conversation at your board with what do you want that up to number to be? And so if you normally have 10, I may say you want to increase it to 12 or 13, because you want the flexibility to be able to add additional directors. If all of a sudden your club takes on a project that is important enough that you want to have a separate director in the club, instead of 10, you may have 11 1 year. And so, the way boards of directors work, it's whatever is in the strategic plan of the organization for the next 5 years or so. That is the skill set they want on their board. And so if you want to add a couple of skill sets on your board and you don't want to remove anyone because they're all very important, then you want to make sure that up to number gives you that flexibility. And so I would recommend against a hard number and put that up to number and make it whatever you want. It could be 13, it could be 15. Doesn't mean you have to go up to that amount. It means you have the option to, if in any given year you need to. Okay, so finances. So who can ask for financial statements? Any member can ask for a financial statements and the audit report. And so they must be provided access during regular business hours, whatever that means for Rotary. And so that's not well defined, but whatever we would consider. Do you have to give them? Yeah, you have to give financial statements to your members, and you have to send them or a summary of them to members at least 5 days before your annual meeting. Now, I would actually write in your bylaws a longer period of time, because 5 days, so most individuals won't read them. or they'll read them an hour before or two. You know, I err on the side of caution. I like to give members notice, and a lot of notice, at least 30 days notice when it comes to something like financials. But if you're always tight to the timeline for your financials in terms of your annual meeting, you'll have to determine what the best lead time is. Do you have to have an audit? You only need an audit if you're a public benefit corporation. And so a public benefit corporation, if you're a registered charity, or if you receive more than 10,000 in a financial year from government, or from donations from people or organizations who are not members, employees, or their close relatives. And so once you become a public benefit corporation, then you're held to a higher standard. So if you have a member that wants to donate, members are okay, but if you have someone from the outside that wants to donate more than $10,000 to your organization, then you might accidentally fall into this and not realize it. Or if you receive more than $10,000 from the government, any part of the government, you might fall into this. So once you fall into this, then you would need to have an annual review. And these are, here for a public benefit organization. Well, actually, it says here you can pass an extraordinary resolution to have a review engagement instead of an audit. And so what they're trying to protect against is organizations that raise a lot of money. Their members probably want to have more comfort that their financial records are being done appropriately. And so if your club decides, no, we don't, we're from 0 to 99, you can pass a resolution saying you don't need to do an audit and a review engagement, but you don't know if your members, some members may not agree to that. That's why extraordinary or special resolutions need a higher approval percentage, which is usually, I think it's 2/3. And so I was wrong. So I apologize. At least 80% of members who voted must vote in favor. So it's even higher than 2/3. So 80% have to agree to anything that is considered. It says extraordinary here. You'll also hear the language special resolution. Okay, so I'll move. Now, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to interrupt me. So in terms of government filings, what information do you give the government each year? Yes. Question?
You may need to unmute. The Ginsburg.
Yeah, I can't hear. I don't know if anyone else can hear. I can't hear.
Here's the question, Terry. Mr. Ginsburg is saying we receive more than $10,000 from bingo volunteering. Does this make us a public benefit corporation?
So that specific example, so bingo is...
They're club members though, right?
They're club members, but well, they're volunteering, and it's run by the, I have to see who runs, like who is considered giving you the dollars.
The municipal charity.
Yeah.
It's the Newmarket Charitable Gaming Association.
Yeah, so I'm going to take that one back and actually consult. I'll consult my legal counsel where I work to see about that, because that's a good example.
Yeah, because that'll apply to a number of clubs, Terry. My hunch is that it wouldn't qualify as a public benefit corporation, but it's worth looking into because it affects so many clubs.
Yeah. Randy?
I just want to back up to that approval of the special resolution, which required 8% of the people at the annual meeting, or that would be at the annual meeting. And then it said all of the members had to approve in writing. Is that, I'm a little confused on that. Is that all the members at that meeting, or?
Yeah, and so I don't believe normally the in writing would be if you had an electronic meeting, or if it didn't go to an actual meeting. I have to find it again.
Oh, so it'd be either or.
Yeah, so I'll get back to you on that one once I find it again. But normally you take a vote, and that vote is recorded, and it's recorded in the minutes, and that should be enough. Okay, was I okay? Where was I at meetings? Maybe it was at meetings that came up.
It's under finances.
Okay, it's under finances. Okay.
Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, I drafted a resolution, extraordinary resolution, to waive any audit or review.
Yep.
Under 76. And the second question is a rather bold one. Would you make available your amended bylaw as a precedent for us?
There is an example that you will get. An example bylaw is on this website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We're Canadian. We're incorporated under the Canada Not-for-Profit, and so and they're similar. There's not much difference between the two, but it wouldn't be exactly the same.
Mm.
So yeah, so I'm going to have to get more clarity on this one, because normally the in writing would, so my interpretation is the in writing means it's in the minutes and the members approve the minutes of the meeting. And so that would not, because every member would not have to write that they agree on these. I haven't seen that in practice myself. But happy if anyone else has, if they have any information.
Well, Larry, on our special resolution or extraordinary one, I was advancing it, preparing a precedent for that at our normal members meet. The president would call a meeting, and we would have the normal members, 80% of them approve it. There's nothing about them signing anything.
Right. And that's normally how I've seen it done.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And so in terms of filing, so you have to file your, your returns. And so there are a number of things that organizations file. So there's an information return that you file, but there's also, as part of that information return, it's updating all the directors who are on file, maybe your address, if you need to update your address. And there are other items that need to be updated that many clubs forget to do. They'll just file the paper return and they won't file the updates. And this is where you have a disconnect between your what the government has on file and what your actual directors and all of that. The Ontario Business Registry makes this a lot easier to do. You can do it all online now. Once you're able to get in, getting in is the key, as you'll see later on. And if you're a charity, you need to file your actual tax return. And not-for-profits don't pay taxes, but there's a separate return for charities. So then in terms of meetings, so electronic board and members meetings. And so previously, if you did not have it in your bylaws that you could have electronic meetings weren't, they weren't allowed, but many would have electronic meetings anyway and be in contravention of their bylaws. And so now we have, because of COVID, they temporarily suspended that, and they said you could hold electronic meetings, and they've extended it until September 30th of 2023. So this is another reason why you want to get your bylaws approved, because you want to be able to hold those meetings, or at least not be in contravention of your bylaws in terms of holding those meetings. And so you can hold meetings online or by phone. Participants must be able to speak, listen, or live chat each other at the same time. So they're trying to mimic what you could do live. So if you do not allow that, then the meeting isn't properly constituted. In terms of voting, the chair can decide to ignore the not-for-profits bylaws in terms of how to vote if it isn't practical, and this is during COVID. And so you want to make sure your bylaws are reasonable when it comes to how you're going to vote. And so if your bylaws say it has to be all secret ballot, it has to be all secret ballot. But you want that flexibility within your bylaws. Is it a show of hands? Is it a ballot? Is it a survey monkey? Like, I don't know whatever you would decide to put in there. And then the chair of the meeting that is held online decides how to record the votes taken at the meeting. And so it allows you with some leeway. How often do you have to have board meetings? There's no rule. Usually we have them once a month in Rotary, but you could have them once a quarter. You can have them like in terms of an official board meeting. So we say board meeting, your bylaws will say what the official board meeting schedule will be. You have to hold your board meetings, wherever your bylaws allow, unless your articles say something else. And so, and you can, can you schedule them electronically? Yes, unless your bylaws say you can't. So now, in terms of, the Act, it says here that the Act says that any phone electronic tools must be used to allow all participants to communicate, and we went through that. Practically speaking, directors should only vote by phone or electronically if you can verify the identity of the voter. So in this case, if I want to be really, really rigid, I wouldn't allow anyone that isn't on camera to vote, because I can't identify that that's the person that should be voting. And so, like I said, to be really rigid, most clubs won't do that. But once again, all you need is someone who understands the rules and isn't happy with a decision to come back to you and say, you didn't do that properly. I have a problem with it. So I'll just, you take that for what it is. But I would expect, if I was calling a vote, I would ask everyone to have their camera on so that I can confirm that it's them. And it says you cannot tell how each vote was cast. That one there is a lot harder to do, because we don't, if your bylaws, this is where you want your bylaws to say how the voting is supposed to work. Because I am fairly certain, and I'm going to have to go to my legal counsel and ask about this one, because I'm fairly certain a show of hands is an appropriate way to vote. And a show of hands, everyone will see whose hands are up or not up. So so I'm going to have to get back to you on that if that's a problem, but I don't think it should be a problem. How much notice must a director get? Your bylaws will say. And can a director choose not to get notice? So if as a director, if you're not given the notice period that is in your bylaws, you can have the meeting canceled. You can say, I did not receive enough notice. I do not have enough time to review the documents I need to review. Therefore, the meeting, I'm not going to participate in the meeting. It shouldn't be held. And that is valid to do. Do we do it? No, but it is valid to do. Now, if you are unhappy that not enough notice wasn't given, but you attend the meeting, then you waive your right to notice. And so that means that you are in agreement, you're okay with the notice period, even though technically you might not be, but by showing up, then you're assumed to have waived your right. And conversely, when there's a decision made at the board, if you were not there, it is important that you read, there is a timeline, and the timeline is in another presentation that I have. It's in the appendices to my presentation. There's a timeline that if you do not object to a decision and want your name on record as objecting, then you are deemed to be in support. And so if you missed the board meeting, I would get, once the minutes come out, I would read the decisions and ensure that you're in support of those decisions. Or if there's something that you are really not in support of, you can write to the secretary and have it put on record that you're not in support of the decision. So how often do members need to meet? So once every 15 months at least. And that's pretty standard. And so the deadline is normally 6 months after your year end. You have to, so most of us have our AGMs in December, and that's 6 months after the June 30th year end. You need to hold your members meeting in Ontario. So not sure that any Rotary clubs would hold it outside of Ontario, but you do have to hold it in Ontario. You can hold them electronically unless your bylaws say you can't. And so you want to make sure you have that in your bylaws that you can. And then there are a number of items that you have to discuss. Your financial statements have to be presented, any report of a review or audit, the resolution to have a review instead of an audit, or any resolution to have an audit or a review. You elect directors at your meeting, and you appoint or reappoint auditors or your accountant. In terms of informing your members, at least 10 days notice before a meeting, and they cannot get notice more than 50 days before. At the district, our notice period is 30 days. And that seems to be a standard, but you could go as low as 10 days if that works for your club. And ahead of the meeting, so this is something that actually does not happen too often, and could be a sticking point that I think people should take notice of. So you need to give member the text of any special resolutions that will be voted on, and you must give them enough detail so that they can understand it and decide whether or not they support it. And so coming to a meeting and just doing a verbal on a decision you want to make is probably not enough, because you didn't give them the text within the notice period. And so so those of you that are on the district, you will see that we go through a very rigid process. You know, I will send an email out 30 days before with the actual resolution and a description of what our resolutions are going to be and why, and provide the information that individuals need to be able to make those decisions. Now, they're not hard decisions. Usually we're electing a new director. And so that'll just, you know, that's sort of simple to go through. But if there's anything that you want to do with the club that is a special resolution, you have to do what I call in the business world a briefing note. So you give them a note, you know, context behind it, why, alternatives, recommendation, and then hopefully that's enough. And then you would take questions at the meeting before a vote. Okay, so the questions I don't go through, you can easily read. And so if there's one you want me to go through, please flag it. So who's a member of your not-for-profit?
Terry, there's a couple of questions in the chat box, one of which you might be able to address now. The other one might be too later. The first one being, can you hold hybrid member meetings, or is it all electronic or all in person? Do we know that?
You whatever's in your bylaws. And so put the option in there to hold a hybrid meeting.
Okay. And the next question is, do Rotary's recommended Rotary Club bylaws comply with ONCA? So
I will show you an example of the Rotary, what Rotary says to put in it, and it's literally one page. Okay. And so the answer is yes, they do. You know, Rotary has the bare minimum of what to put in a bylaw. And so ONCA actually expands on what Rotary says to put in your bylaws. Okay, so who's a member? So for us, I would keep it very simple. A member of the club is a member of the not-for-profit. And so that should be very simple. So the rules about members, it talks about classes, but your bylaw says it includes, so your bylaw will say what makes a person a member. So in Rotary, what makes them a member? They fill out the Rotary application, they go through the process that your club has, and they're voted in by the membership. And you usually, you might have by majority vote, you might have it by, so I know some clubs that I think have it by, it has to be unanimous that someone gets voted in as a member, and normally it happens that way. But I can say that during my year of presidency, we did deny someone membership into the club. And so based on our process, we did not feel that person held the values of Rotary because of some due diligence that we did. And we actually, the board denied it. It didn't even go to the membership. But you may have, so you want to think about this in terms of, what do you want that vote to be for someone to become a member? Because we all, even though we're Rotarians, there's always conflict. There are personality issues. If you do a unanimous, that might cause problems down the road. So you're going to have how much membership costs, our membership fees, how members can be transferred. There is a process in Rotary to transfer membership. And, I've been in situations where people have left clubs, and instead of transferring their membership, they sort of cut off in one club and started up in another. But during that period of time, they lost all their Rotary access, all their online access, because they were deregistered from one club instead of saying they wanted to transfer and move to another club, which would maintain their Rotary access. And then the terms, what membership terms do we have? 1 year or life, and you can decide that as your club determines. What basic rights do you have? There's a number of them. So, get a free copy of the articles and bylaws. Those should be posted on your website. The minutes of meetings, once again, those should be posted on your web, not like your internal club runner. Your resolutions, list of directors. So there's a whole bunch of information that you should just post it and make it available for members. I'm not going to go through this because I don't recommend more than one type. You can always change the structure. Transfer is allowed in Rotary. When do members' personal information have to be shared? And so there are two situations in which a member's personal information has to be shared. If a member makes a proposal before a member's meeting. So if they make a valid that is included in the meeting notice, the name and address of the member who made the proposal has to be included. And all members and their legal representatives have the right to get a list of all current members. And so usually I would say go to the Club Runner app, and the Club Runner app has a list of all the members of your club. It's a great little app. It has that functionality. So membership ends, and that'll be in your bylaws in terms of, but obviously when someone dies or are expelled, or if there is a term, it expires, or if you close down your not-for-profit.
Terry, there's a related question in the chat box. Do all membership applications need to be approved by the club members or just the board?
So I would put that in your, so in my club, it is approved by board first, and then it goes to club members. You can change that process if you want. I don't believe there's anything in Rotary that says the members have to approve someone in the club. And you would have, your bylaws would say, so your bylaws would say how to remove a member. But before you remove a member, your article, you can add to this procedure, but you cannot take away from it. So the articles and bylaws must explicitly say who has the power to remove members. And so normally that is the board of directors. The individual facing must be given at least 15 days notice. So this is being really prescriptive when it comes to removing a member. And so you want to make sure that any procedure you have in your current bylaw, or if it's not in your bylaw, it's in the procedures document, has to be consistent with what is here. You know, at least 5 days in advance of the potential remover, they must be provided an opportunity to address the decision makers in writing or orally or by any other means. The decision to remove a member must be taken in good faith. And if the individual is dissatisfied, they have to have the right to appeal to the Ontario Superior Court. I would probably want to put an appeals process in your club. And then if they want to go to the Ontario Superior Court for Rotary, then they can. And so, so there are different, I'm not going to go through membership structures, public benefit corporation. I want to go to voting and quorum, because this is something that is a little different. And so what is proxy voting? I'm sure many of you have done proxy voting. So when a member who can't go to a meeting lets a not-for-profit know that someone else will go to that meeting and vote instead of them. And so can we allow directors to vote by proxy? So the answer to that is no. So if you've ever been to a board meeting where a director who wasn't there gave a vote to someone, that's actually not valid. Only the individuals at the board meeting can vote. And so that's something that may be surprising to some clubs, because I know this happens all the time. How many directors need to be at a board meeting? So your quorum normally is majority, but your articles will set the quorum. And so you can have less than a majority as a quorum if you want to vote that way. And then you can hold your bylaws holding online, that's fine. Do members have the right to vote by proxy? So it says here, no, voting members don't have the right to vote by proxy unless your articles or bylaws allow it. So most old bylaws, they may have proxy. Some of them don't have proxy in it. So you need to change that in your bylaws. So you want to think about how absent members will vote on motions that are raised during a meeting. So someone gives a proxy vote for something that they got information at, but you can also bring something up at a meeting that someone needs to vote on. And if they're not there, like, how do you handle that situation? And it'll be club by club. You may decide they can't vote on it. And so then that becomes, but you would have to make that decision on how. Now, can a member appoint a non-member to vote on their behalf? So the answer is yes. So now your bylaws can say that they need to be a member. So you don't want a member of your club asking their best friend to come to a meeting to vote who is not a Rotarian. That just doesn't make sense. So you probably would want to put that in your bylaws. It has to be a member. Do you have to send out a proxy form with notice of meeting? No. To have an official vote, how many members have to be in the meeting? So you need a majority of members to make a quorum of members, but your bylaws can set a lower or higher limit. It's all dependent on your bylaws. The standard is 50+1, which would be majority. And you can hold it online as long as your bylaws say. So I know I took some time here to go through that. I wanted to show you how intuitive this really is. Like, it really has a lot of information. And transitioning to bylaws, the same thing, or to ONCA, it has great steps. These are the steps that I went through in the presentation, and a great step on how to file the changes. And so I will go back to
Terry. Before moving on, we have another question in the chat box related to this. To clarify, when we're at a board meeting, can we not just vote by a show of hands? Is there anything that precludes that?
No, there is nothing that precludes voting by a show of hands. I would say if a board member asks for a secret ballot, that you be prepared to do that. And you would put that in your bylaw in terms of the method of voting. And it's standard in the bylaw to say that you can vote by show of hands, but if secret ballot is requested, then you need to perform secret ballot. So these keys could be, they could be easy, they could be difficult. What I want to show you is So what is a company key? So the company key is your electronic login to Service Ontario. And so if I go up here in my presentation, if you click on the business registry, it'll take you to this screen, the Ontario Business Registry. And I have an instruction manual on the registry that I will send out with the presentation. You can do so many things. And so you can search for a corporation or other entity. So let's see. Now, the one thing about this registry, sometimes you click links and you end up going in a circle, but the information is here, and I actually find it very, very intuitive. So search the business registry. And so I'm going to type in the Rotary Club. You can see I typed in the Rotary Club of Whitby. And so, Fred, I'm going to use Whitby because Whitby Sunrise is federally incorporated. But you see Whitby Sunrise come up here, and you see we originally incorporated in 1989, and that lapsed. In 2015, we reincorporated, and it says Federal Corporation Non-Share. Whereas the Rotary Club of Whitby, if you click onto this, it will show you the information. So 1964 it was incorporated. It's not for profit. It's active, and it says Canada, Ontario. If it was federally incorporated, it would say I think Canada Federal beside it. And so the head office, registered office, is in Oshawa. So I'm not sure if that still holds true, but that's where it is. It doesn't give you the address, but where your registered office is very important to ensure that is up to date, because that will cause you more time through the process. And I'll tell you why in a second. And so if I go back to the business registry, you go here, you can get your company key. So if you click on Get Company Key, it'll ask you for the name, the corporation number, and the business identification number. So you type in the name, and I'm not going to do this because I don't want to send a company key to a Rotary Club that's not ready to get it. But you search, you request a company key. If you have an email address on file, which I'm sure many of you don't with Service Ontario, it'll send it to that email address. It also will send the company key to whatever registered address you have. So if that company key, if the address is a president from 10 years ago who is no longer in the club, that person's going to get the company key. And so that's what takes time. So in my work life, my organization has 3 corporations. I requested the company key for each corporation. And so far within a week, I got 1. And I'm still waiting for the other 2 because those addresses, they're floating somewhere in the organization. So whatever address we have isn't the corporate office of our company. It's it's probably a department somewhere within the organization, and they're figuring out what the hell do I do with this letter I got from Service Ontario that says company key, and so I'm assuming it's going to circulate for a couple of weeks or maybe a month, and then it'll finally get to me. But the first one did get to me because it came to our corporate head office address. But before you get a company key, you have to log in to ONCA. And I don't know if people know what ONCA is. That is your own personal. So that's your own personal identification key with the province of Ontario. So it's linked to you as an individual. And so if I go here to sign up now, there's a registration that you fill in. You fill in your ID, which could be your email address, a password, some questions, a recovery email address if something happens, and you sign up, and they send you a key. And then so if I go here and I'll put in my company key. So I didn't use my address, I just used my name. think this is the password. And so this allows you to do a lot of things that you used to do. Instead of going to a Service Ontario station, you can just do it online. And so here it's taken me to find a business, search for a business, legal name. So if I go to Kensington Health Center, which is where I work, and I go here. So I'm doing this live. I haven't registered my company key yet. I want to see what happens. I wanted you to see it too. So that's my company key. It's taken a while. And so with this company key, I should be able to do, whatever, all those paper forms that we were filling out before, you should be able to fill in online now. So it should give me access to all of that. And so what you do is you're, okay, so here's all the information. There is no official email, so I'm going to want to change that so that we make it a lot easier for us. And so it gives you so many, like all of these things that you can now change. So we have a general detail. This is the official address. All the directors' names should be here. And these are all the directors. You should see my name here as well, actually, so I just saw a director that is no longer on our board. This officer has been retired for a number of years. She no longer works in our organization. This is me, so I should take him off. So, and he's no longer there. So in my own organization, we do not have an updated list of active officers. And so there you go. That's a great example. And now more work that I have to do. So then so what I did was I connected my one key to Service Ontario. And then within Service Ontario, I asked for the company key. And now I'm able to get in and do this, to do all of this work, or, I will give the company key to our secretary, and she will be able to do a number of the work here. And so I'm going to get out of this.
Question for you, Terry, while you're doing that.
Yes.
How many officers or directors should have a company key for a club?
Well, there's only one company key. Each director or officer can get their own one key. And then so what you probably want is, your club secretary is the one who is normally responsible for this information. So you'd probably want your secretary to link the company key, and you want your treasurer to be linked, and you may want the president to be linked as well. You don't need a whole bunch of individuals, but you may want at least two.
And this is my follow-up question, as those positions turn over, should their replacements get their own keys? So
their replacement will have their own one key, like they'll have to have their own one key, and their replacement or the individual who they're going to replace should make the proper amendments before that replacement occurs. So you want to keep current. Okay, and so I want to go back to the business registry. Let me do this. So I think I've shown you enough in the business registry, but this is where you would also go and incorporate you online, you do the incorporation. What I want to show you is when you go and do your articles, so your articles of amendment, this is the paper form. This is copied exactly online. And so it's just so much easier to go online and file this. Corporation name, your number, your company key. So you have to get the company key to make a change. Do your official email address, the contact name. So everything you saw online is in this form. The name, is it English, French, combined? The number of directors, here's where you choose between fixed number or minimum, maximum. So if you click on it, it'll ask you for the minimum and the maximum. If you click on here, it asks you for the number. And then do you intend to operate as a charity? Description of any changes to special provisions, and then your authorization, and this has to be approved. So that's one document that you'll be getting. There are instructions for completing it. So I have instructions here that I'll send you as well. That'll walk you through it. And then this was a notice that was given. Articles must be completed and filed under ONCA, and it does reference how to do it electronically here. And so it just, once again, more instructions on how to file these articles of amendment. Here, I have instructions for incorporating a not-for-profit here, and then I think that's all from there. Let's go back to my presentation.
Question from me, Terry.
Yes.
If you choose the minimum maximum route, suppose you choose a minimum of 3, maximum of 20, but in a given year, you have 12 directors, because that's how many you elect. Is there any requirement to lock in that number for a particular year, or as long as you elect a particular number of members within the pre-approved range, that's all you need to do?
That's all you need to do.
Okay.
But that brings up a point that I want to make. If you have a fixed number, you need to have that number of members on your board at the AGM. You cannot have an AGM without having the proper number of directors elected. And so I know an organization that right before the AGM, 2 of their directors decided they were going to resign. And that organization actually had to ask those directors to wait until after the AGM to resign, because you can't legally have the AGM without the number of directors being elected that are in your bylaws. And so that's why the range is so good, because it gives you that flexibility as well. And so I'm going to walk through the last document. There are more slides here, but I'm going to talk to them through this. This is the project plan that I put together to help your club go through this process. And so I started on March 1st. So if you start on March 1st this year, what do you need to do? I would suggest that every board meeting you have, ONCA is an agenda item, and you just go through you have that, and you have the discussions along the way on how you're moving throughout that process. And so I suggest you set up a committee to do it. Don't let the board be responsible as a whole. It's easier to have a small group of individuals really focus on this, and don't, maybe some individuals who aren't doing fundraising, who aren't involved in maybe hands-on activities, who really enjoy doing this stuff and would just love to dig into the bylaws and the processes. Probably no more than 4 people, with the secretary being the chair, and just really task that group to focus on this. We talked about the company keys. So you have to get those keys, and depending on what address you have, you might have to make a phone call to Service Ontario. It could take between a week or maybe a month to get that key. So just say you do that, and then, you know, you start in March, you set your governance, you know, you do the committee, the agenda and all that. You know, by April, mid-April, you should be ready to review all your documents. You have your company key, you gather all those documents, that list of documents, and have that committee just go through, understand those documents well, and look for inconsistencies. You know, get the sample bylaw. So make sure I don't miss that. We'll go back to the website and look at the bylaw. Get that sample bylaw that is compliant with ONCA, and have them cross-reference their procedures and everything in those documents to the sample bylaw, and make sure everything is aligned, or flag what's not aligned. And that might be a discussion point at a board meeting. We went through this process, here's what we found, so the board is aware. Then that group, you know, say that review takes a couple of months to go through all those documents. Then in June, from June to September, start drafting those amended documents. And so draft your new bylaw, draft your articles of incorporation, draft any, you know, change any policies or procedures that need to be changed, sort of align everything together so that they're all consistent. And, you know, I give so much time because it just takes a while to go through everything, and it'll be, you know, those months will fly by for that committee. But during that period of time, my suggestion is you have your board meeting, the committee gives an update. You know, what have they found? What are they thinking? You know, they'll bring questions to the board. Should we have a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 20? Should we have a minimum of 10, a maximum of 15? Like, those are the types of discussions that should happen at a board meeting, not come to the board, you know, at the end of the process and then the board not agree, right? And so you want to, whoever's on this committee should consistently be updating the board on decision points that they're going through and getting the board's feedback. And so you take all this time to do that, so that when you get to the board approval time, it's really a rubber stamp, because the board has been through the process on a monthly basis for the last 9 months. And so the board approves it. And then, you know, all your policies, everything in terms of governance is aligned. And then you put it on your website, and you have members, you give them notice that these documents are there, and you'd like members to go through and give you feedback. And so you give notice in September so that they have a good 2.5 months to do their own due diligence, and that they can't come back to you at the end of the day and say, you didn't give me enough time. And so, and because what's going to happen is you're going to get a number of individuals that won't read them until the week before, maybe even the day before, and might have a problem. And you've given more than enough notice. And what I would say is, the next time we come to review our bylaws, you're happy to participate, but we're going to move forward with a vote because you've been given enough notice. And then at your AGM, you will have the bylaws approved. You will have the articles of amendment approved, and you can submit those in. The bylaws you don't have to submit, the articles you do. You go on to your, you know, you have your key in place, you have everything so that you can just go on, update the registry, update all the information, and then you're done. Now, if you're a charity though, you need to submit also to the CRA and the Public Guardian and Trust. And so you have to wait for those approvals after that. But if you follow this timeline, you will submit in December, and you will have a 10-month period where the government could approve those, CRA could approve those, because your drop dead date is October 18th of 2024. And so this is the project plan, and you will get a copy of this. It's easy to use. Your committee can go through and set their own project plan, but this is just a sample that I've put together.
Terry, here's an interesting question. I think I've seen this one before. Because what you've just stated here is that it implies that the bylaws need to be approved by the members. But is there a situation where the board can amend the bylaws by itself?
The legislation says that the board can amend the bylaws, and those bylaws take effect when the board approves them. but only up until the members' meeting. Then the members have to vote on the bylaws. And if the members decided to vote against the bylaws, the old bylaws take effect after that. So you really want everyone in step. Like if the board makes a radical change, you have, you know, from this project plan, you have 3 months that you can use those bylaws. And if the members don't approve, then you go back to the old way. And so what I want to show you, oops, okay, I have to go back to my presentation. My screen share is covering up. Okay, click on the link. Come back to here. Under resources. You have your, so here's where the sample bylaws are. So there's a PDF here that you can download that'll give you the sample bylaws. I just want to show you where that was. And then they have their own bylaw builder. And this bylaw builder has been reviewed, legally reviewed. It is legally compliant with ONCA. And so when you go to get started, I suggest that you register, that you log in, because they ask you a number of questions and it could take a while for you to go through the process. So you want to save. And so basically, you just go through here. You know, are you a charity currently or planning to apply? No. What is the name of your organization? I'll just say Rotary. Oop. Not that matters. You know, and it continues to ask you questions. So basically it interviews you and it goes through all of these sections. I'm sure there are other sections here. You continue with the interview and then it prints out bylaws that then you can take to your board, your committee. You can review them. You can then insert items in there that maybe are more Rotary centric, because you can put whatever you want in your bylaws as long as you have the legal, you know, the compliance with ONCA. And this is such an easy way to do it. You know, I'll save and exit, which means when I come back, it'll come back to this next spot. And, you know, that's it. Is there anything that I haven't covered or a question that someone might have that you'd like some direction on?
Terry? Hello?
Yes.
What happens, or what trouble do you encounter? You say, we like our bylaws the way they are, and all we will do is work together with our bylaw and the ONCA and change nothing.
Well, so what I would say is, so your bylaws apply other than specific sections. And so so this is ONCA. So this is the
yes
ONCA legislation. It is several pages long. And you can see ONCA has so many different sections. Not all of these are, you know, are apply to Rotary, but it has very specific rules. You would have to take the sections from here and make sure that you understand them.
Yes.
And make sure that you post. So you're still going to go through a process of adding in the items from ONCA that have to be in there to your bylaw. So why wouldn't you just go and review and revise your, you know, all your bylaws?
Without you, it would be too difficult.
That bylaw builder makes it very easy.
Okay.
Makes it very, and I would suggest, my suggestion would be do the bylaw builder, then take your old bylaws and whatever is not in the builder that's in your old bylaws, have a discussion. Should we put them in the new bylaw, and just add it later to the new bylaw, and then you have a fresh set.
Thank you.
For what it's worth, Gene, I've been on a few webinars regarding this, and all of the speakers have recommended to me that it's easier to start from scratch and sort of get a template that is going to be compliant with the act, and then, as Terry was saying, sort of add in bits and pieces that are unique to your situation, where the standard form bylaw allows those degrees of freedom, and that's supposedly easier than starting with your current bylaws and trying to make them ONCA compliant. That's people are saying that's more difficult to do than the other way around.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, just a question. I think the bylaws absolutely be in line with ONCA. Do you envision that the articles of incorporation would have to be amended, or would you envision any time when they wouldn't have to be, or just if our bylaws are in line with ONCA, do you envision that we would still have to update our articles amendment?
I think you probably will, just because your articles now probably have a set fixed membership. And so the articles, you're going to want to change that to up to.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess one of the challenging things I find too, because a lot of them we were incorporated back in 1964, and or earlier even. A lot of the wording is probably way outdated. For today's, if you were looking at today's current articles of incorporation. So I'm just wondering if that would kind of highlight, they'd say, well, you have to make those other changes to it as well. I'm just wondering if that would open up a little bit of a Pandora's box a little on it, that's all.
So I think there's validity there when you're talking about being a charity.
Yeah.
But if you're not a charity, then I don't think it would be scrutinized. But it's actually good to have that discussion at the board level. Is to say, here's what our purpose says in our old articles. Does that still apply? Like, are we actually meeting that mandate, or has our mandate somehow changed? Mm-hmm. And if with Rotary, I don't think the mandate, you may add to it. I don't think what's there, it will be irrelevant. I think it is still relevant, but you'll want to add to it and just make it a better purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Terry?
It's Len Kennedy here from the Belleville Club. I'm not sure whether we have letters patent, but I believe you said earlier, Terry, that if you do, they're going to end up being written into articles of incorporation now?
That's right.
Okay. And if there was more than one version of that, I guess we'd have, well, I guess it would always be the most recent version, right?
It would be, yeah. Yes, because you would have had probably supplement letters patent.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah. And so the great thing is you want to clean all that up, get rid of the old ones, just get rid of them. There's no need to save them. Or if you want to archive, just make sure it's under an archive and just have those documents available for members to be able to see.
And Terry, I might just share one thing that I've gone through. We have actually two foundations, two registered charitable organizations, both registered in Ontario. One of the challenges when I took over was trying to get the original articles of incorporation and getting all of those documents together. I had to go through Service Canada and all of that. So, and I agree with you. I mean, that is a challenge alone just to kind of do that. So for the other folks on the call, even that can be a little bit of a challenge trying to get all of that information, because it is a bit of a hurdle to go through on that particular one. You got to find your Ontario Corporation number, et cetera, that may not be that readily available. So
right, and so I had that challenge too for the district, and then you end up requesting it. They send you a link in your email, and you're busy at work, and you don't get to the link for a week, and then when you click on the link, it's expired, and so you have to go through the process once once again. And so it's just so much easier when you have all that information organized and you're able to get in, like getting that company key, I think will make everyone's life a lot easier because it's just all there online.
Any other questions for Terry? And it is 8:31. How's that for time? Because we started 1 minute late. Thanks very much, Terry, for doing this, and thank you all for participating. We're going to make this recording available. Terry is going to make his slides available. Dave, I'm going to throw to you for a minute, Dave Andrews. What's the best place for us to post this recording? And I think actually I'm going to stop recording now.